Good morning, evening, or night. Wherever you are, welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Tuesday, 13th May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. India's stock market experienced a volatile session as the Sensex closed down 1282 points, a 1.55% decrease, settling at 81,148.22 on May 13th, while the Nifty 50 ended at 24,578.35, down 346 points, or 1%. Earlier in the day, the Sensex had briefly crashed nearly 1,300 points to 81,048.2, with the Nifty 50 dipping below 24,600, though BSE mid-cap and small-cap indices saw gain. Benchmarks slipped earlier in the week due to a post-rally pullback and anxieties over foreign investment flows. Puneet Sharma, CEO of Whitespace Alpha, suggests a selective approach to the markets due to short-term geopolitical risks, while affirming India's long-term growth prospects. Several Indian companies released their Q4 FY25 results. Bharti Airtel reported a multifold increase in net profit to 11,022 crore, with revenue rising 27.3% year-over-year to 47,1876 crore, attributed to price hikes. Maharatna Tesu GAIL, India's Q4 net profit edged up 1% year-over-year to 2,506 crore, with the board recommending a final dividend of Kron per share, 10%, although GAIL's standalone net profit declined 47% quarter-over-quarter. India's defense sector is poised for growth, with Antique Stock Broking predicting a potential five-fold increase in order books for Indian defense shipyards within 2 years, supported by a gigantic 0.45 trillion order pipeline for submarines and frigates. Defense stocks such as Bharat Electronics, BAIL and Hindustan Aeronautics experienced significant gains after Prime Minister Modi advocated for Made in India defense equipment, leading to a 9% surge in defense stocks, contrasting with a decline in Chinese defense stocks. In other economic news, India's inflation rate slowed to 3.16% in April, marking the sixth consecutive month of decline. Ant Group is planning to sell 4% of its stake in Paytm for Rs 2,066 crore through a bulk deal. NC, Summer Stock Celica gained during intraday trade, despite an Indian stock market sell-off following the announcement of a new range of washing machines. Geopolitically, rising tensions between India and Pakistan have impacted stock markets, though Indian shares initially rallied on ceasefire news. Markets and the rupee are expected to open lower following reports of drone and missile attacks originating from Pakistan. India has approved additional Russian insurers to provide marine cover. Ashish Chauhan, CEO of NSE, commented that India has now secured a leading position in the tech race after a millennium-long absence. Shifting to France, Dassault Aviation stock, known for a fail, rebounded over 3% from Monday's low, despite falling 7.83% in the past 5 sessions. It has surged over 350% in the last 5 years. Across the Atlantic, the United States faces potential retaliatory tariffs from India in response to existing U.S. steel duties. China is strategically reinforcing its ties with Latin America to offset the impact of the U.S.-China trade war initiated under the Trump administration. China considers the 90-day truce in the tariff dispute a major win after many tariffs imposed by the U.S. were temporarily lifted. This has spurred Chinese companies, including Shein and Temu, to increase shipments and restock warehouses. Investment banks are revising China's growth forecasts upwards, with Nomura upgrading China stocks in response to the trade deal. Economists, however, caution that the pause might lead to higher prices and instability. Chinese manufacturers are expediting shipments to benefit from the temporary truce, while also preparing for possible future disruptions. Recent data highlights that the US-China trade war had pushed global supply chains precariously close to collapse. Following the provisional trade agreement between the US and China to de-escalate tariffs, confidence in Donald Trump has resurfaced in the United States, albeit with mixed reactions. Businesses are ramping up imports of Chinese goods but are wary about the future. A U.S. coal company's discovery of rare earth elements could lessen U.S. reliance on China. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer played vital roles in negotiating the temporary U.S.-China tariff deal, driven by worries that the trade war's costs threaten global economic growth. President Trump's artificial intelligence czar, David Sachs, is negotiating a deal for the potential sale of U.S.-designed AI chips to G42, an Emirati firm under investigation for its links to China. In India, the share price of Avic Chengdu aircraft declined by 9% after Prime Minister Modi addressed the nation. Global shares saw modest gains, although the initial excitement surrounding the 90-day U.S.-China trade truce has waned. Saudi Arabia is making substantial strides in artificial intelligence, with NVIDIA sending 18,000 Blackwell chips for a 500-megawatt data center and providing chips to the Saudi AI firm WHAM. The country has initiated a multi-billion-dollar AI venture and partnered with NVIDIA to develop AI technologies. Collaborative efforts with the U.S. are also being explored to advance AI. Turning to economic matters, the White House has announced a $600 billion Saudi investment in the U.S. following agreements made during President Trump's visit with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The Saudi Wealth Fund is reportedly planning to order 30 Boeing jets, and Aviles has ordered up to 30 Boeing 737 MAX jets. While Saudi Arabia is increasing its purchases of U.S. weapons, defense stocks have decreased. The finance minister reports a private sector surge and record low unemployment. The MENA region saw 14 IPOs valued at $2.10 billion in Q1, with Saudi Arabia leading. Accelerated Solutions has set its IPO price, seeking $21 million. Small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, constitute 30% of listed firms on the Saudi market. In technology news, Elon Musk announced that Starlink has been approved for use in Saudi Arabia and mentioned plans to introduce Tesla robotaxis to the region. Finally, the Saudi Arabia smart lock market is projected to reach USD 95.8 million by 2033. 38,570 Hajj pilgrims have arrived in Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is positioned as a leader in the Middle East's fintech sector. The United States and China have agreed to a 90-day tariff pause, a move that has sparked varied responses among American businesses relying on Chinese imports, swinging from relief to apprehension. This temporary reprieve is anticipated to boost shipping demand as companies scramble to take advantage of the tariff lull, possibly resulting in congestion and delays at U.S. ports. Following this trade truce, Nomura adopted a bullish outlook on Chinese stocks, and analysts have highlighted China's growing role as a significant counterbalance to the U.S. The U.S. delegation to trade discussions in Geneva was led by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. Shine and Temu are also expected to restock their U.S. warehouses during this pause. Some analysts are concerned that the Trump administration's short-term tactics are endangering the U.S. exorbitant privilege. Turning to Russia, the Council of the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, has held the nation accountable for the downing of Malaysia Airlines, Flight 17 over Ukraine in 2014, a tragedy that claimed the lives of all 298 passengers and crew. Despite potential discussions between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky, the European Union is formulating new sanctions aimed at Russia's shadow fleet. The value of Russian oil exports is being impacted by a recent price decrease. Japan is navigating a challenging economic climate, with global trade tensions and internal restructuring playing significant role. The head of the global trade watchdog recently described global free trade as being in a crisis due to the disruptive impacts of U.S. tariff policies during a visit to Japan. This has led to increased investment in gold within Japan as a safeguard against economic uncertainties arising from these tariffs. Simultaneously, Japan is actively encouraging China to further open its markets to foreign investment. Major Japanese corporations are responding to these pressures. Nissan, based in Yokohama, intends to reduce its global workforce by roughly 15%, or 20,000 employees, by fiscal year 27 following reported financial losses. The company has also put its profit forecast for the year on hold, which has fueled worries about Japan's trade negotiation strategies with the United States. Honda reported a 24.5% profit decrease for the fiscal year, ending in March, citing lower vehicle sales in China and the effects of U.S. tariffs. The company forecasts further profit declines due to the ongoing impact of these tariffs. However, Japanese stocks are expected to increase following the de-escalation of tariffs between the U.S. and China. In financial news, Japan's largest insurer is evaluating riskier overseas investments in collateralized loan obligations closed. The legal sector is also involved, with Mori Hamada and Matsumoto and TMI Associates advising on a major merger within the Japanese drugstore industry. Arab stock markets have shown a strong upward trend, buoyed by optimism surrounding US-China trade discussions, encouraging US inflation figures, and robust corporate earnings report. Equities marked their fourth consecutive day of gains as markets carefully analyzed the latest U.S. inflation data. The DAX index, in particular, reached a record high, spurred by tariff reductions agreed upon between the United States and China. Projections indicate a 1.9% increase in first-quarter corporate profits, a notable improvement over earlier forecasts. Several companies experienced significant gains, including turbine manufacturer Vestas, which reported a 9% jump in revenue, and chemicals giant Bayer, whose shares initially rose by 6% and later surged by 11% following better-than-expected profit announcements. Robinhood Markets is set to broaden its reach into Europe through the acquisition of WonderFi, with plans to venture into cryptocurrency-related services. However, prevailing uncertainties surrounding global trade continue to exert influence on market sentiment. Turning to Russia, a prominent European economist has cautioned EU finance ministers that the nation's economy is facing increasing pressure as a result of its invasion of Ukraine and the extensive sanctions subsequently imposed. The United States and China's trade dynamics are significantly impacting global markets. European markets experienced a surge following trade talks between the two economic powerhouses. A 90-day tax break agreement between the U.S. and China provided a further boost to market confidence, with the DAX index reaching a record high as markets responded positively to the tariff cuts. United Kingdom. The UK government is focused on boosting domestic investment and crucial sectors. 17 major pension providers have signed the Mansion House Accord. They pledged to allocate up to £50 billion, with half directed to UK firms. This investment targets domestic private equity, infrastructure, and other unlisted assets. The agreement aims to channel 5% of their assets into UK investments. Watch growth is decelerating alongside a cooling jobs market. The FTSE 100 has stabilized as the initial impact of trade deals lessens. The Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, has authorized crypto derivative trading. GFOX has launched a venue for institutional investors. Latham is managing a significant UK IPO, indicating a resurgence in main market activity. 6 Bulgarian nationals were sentenced in the UK for spying for Russia. The government is promoting measures to strengthen the defense industry. Ukraine. Ukraine's allies have presented an ultimatum to Vladimir Putin. They are demanding a ceasefire in the ongoing conflict. Russia. 6 Bulgarian nationals were sentenced in the UK for espionage activities on behalf of Russia. Additionally, Ukraine's allies have issued an ultimatum to Vladimir Putin, calling for a ceasefire in the conflict with Ukraine. The United States is navigating economic challenges influenced by global trade and tourism shifts. Jewelry giant Pandora prepared for potential trade conflicts during the Trump era by raising prices and rerouting shipments, a move estimated to cost the company millions. Simultaneously, the World Travel and Tourism Council forecasts a $12.50 billion drop in international travel spending in the U.S., citing border detentions and visa concerns. Aiming to stimulate local industry, Hollywood organizations, including the Motion Picture Association, have requested tax breaks from President Trump. In related news, President Trump signed an executive order targeting pharmaceutical costs, expressing disapproval of European nations' success in negotiating lower drug prices, although the order's legal foundation remains unclear. Canada is experiencing a delay in Honda Canada's $15 billion electric vehicle investment in Ontario, affecting plans for both an EV battery plant and the overhaul of a vehicle assembly facility. Meanwhile, the S&P TSX Composite Index saw a positive close, rising by 0.69%. Shifting focus to the digital realm, Toronto recently hosted Canada Crypto Week, a key event centered on discussions about innovation, regulation, and tokenization within the cryptocurrency industry. Further developments in the crypto space show Robinhood's acquisition of Canada's WandaFi for $250 million, which equates to roughly $179 million, signaling a strategic move to broaden its presence in the Canadian crypto market. This acquisition led to an increase of 9% in Hood's stock prices. Germany's business community is urging the government to act on promises made during the election. Investor sentiment in Germany saw a surprise boost this May based on the ZEW survey results. Despite heavy German investment in the US, companies are weighing investment reconsiderations due to declining manufacturing investment data. Soars in Germany suffered a $1.90 billion profit decline in the first quarter, attributed to the Los Angeles wildfires. Vista became the first German company to launch an IPO in 2025. Asian markets saw a mixed performance, initially buoyed by a Wall Street rally, but later tempered by US-China trade tensions. A subsequent trade truce between the US and China then sparked a rally in Asian stocks, alleviating concerns about a potential global recession. This truce also encouraged foreign investors to reinvest in Asian equities during May, reversing earlier capital outflows. However, Hong Kong stocks experienced a downturn despite new parcel concessions, highlighting the complexities of regional and global economic influences. Some Asian stocks were identified as undervalued, with potential upsides of up to 48.2%, indicating investment opportunities amid market volatility. Turning to India, Devendra Fadnavis, the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, conducted a review of security readiness in Mumbai. Singapore is spearheading genomic research by sequencing 100,000 Asian genomes. This project aims to correct the underrepresentation of Asian populations in global genomic studies. The Singapore stock market saw a cooling effect after its initial rally, prompted by temporary U.S.-China tariff relief. Meanwhile, GAIL, Singapore's sovereign wealth fund, is closely monitoring risks in the South Korean market. The upcoming June elections and the potential influence of figures like Lee Jae-myung are key concerns for Singaporean investors. Taiwan's stock market surged, fueled by the tech trade show Computex. Morgan Stanley's April data showed significant improvements for the country. Tariffs, an Innolux subsidiary, plans a U.S. listing and is developing advanced windshield display tech. Taiwan's IT sector is preparing for Computex 2025. The nation conducted its first live-fire exercise with U.S.-supplied rocket systems. Eased U.S.-China trade tensions also positively impacted Taiwan's stock market. NVIDIA's presence continues to be a key economic driver. Qatar's potential gift of a $400 million luxury jet to former President Trump is under scrutiny, raising ethical questions. This consideration has sparked criticism from both Democrats and allies. In response, Chuck Schumer plans to block Trump's Department of Justice nominees. These actions stem from ethical concerns surrounding the Qatari jet gift. Separately, Hang Seng Indexes aims to improve market connectivity and fortify relations with the Qatar Financial Center. This initiative follows agreements made during John Lee Kachiu's visit. South Korea's financial markets and business sectors are experiencing notable activity. The cryptocurrency XRP has seen a surge in popularity, outperforming Bitcoin and Ethereum with $1.20 billion attributed to frenzied trading within the country. In the business sector, Brink acquired NextStage to bolster South Korean startups, signaling investment and growth. Luxury watchmaker H. Musa & Sai is aiming for 4,000 sales in South Korea, reflecting confidence in the high-end market. However, the bond market saw panic after Lot Insurance postponed a call option, highlighting potential financial volatility. Brazil is experiencing a surge in popularity for Chinese air conditioner brands, driven by high consumer demand. Significant Chinese investment is further boosting the economy, with the Brazilian government reporting US $4.76 billion in new deals following President Lula's visit to Beijing. Biden's electric vehicle factory in Brazil is progressing, with full operations slated for the end of 2026, targeting 150,000 EVs annually. Tunisia is also actively seeking greater business collaboration with Brazil. Australia is currently experiencing a surge in business confidence, which has driven the country's shares to a 2-month high. This is largely attributed to growing optimism about US-China trade relations. Meanwhile, Australian banks are strategically increasing their deposit holdings as market volatility elevates their funding costs. Greencoat Renewables has announced its intention to pursue a secondary listing on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, JSE, a move that could broaden its investor base and increase its visibility in the South African market. Across Asia and Australia, a growing emphasis on child safety is evident, with nations taking proactive steps and demonstrating a commitment to addressing these issues independently, rather than relying solely on the United States for guidance. India's focus remains on economic development, despite ongoing tensions with Pakistan. The Indian ambassador to Singapore has reassured travelers about safety within India. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, the finance minister projects that the conflict with India will not significantly impact the country's fiscal health. The recent conflict has also brought increased attention to Chinese weaponry, bolstering its reputation due to its battlefield performance. South Africa's unemployment rate climbed to 32.9% in the first quarter, yet a South Africa bond sale saw high demand, signaling increased risk appetite. Nian Group, a South African mobile telecommunications firm, reported a 33% increase in core profit for the first quarter. Across Africa, former Ghanaian President John Mahama urged a united front for the continent ahead of the 25 G20 summit. An African mining company is planning a Hong Kong listing to become a major gold producer in West Africa. East Africa's leading companies are demonstrating signs of gradual improvement. European Council President Antonio Costa has criticized the President of Serbia for his presence at Russia's Victory Day parade. This is despite assurances that Serbia aims to stay on course for EU membership. In the United States, American Bitcoin, co-founded by Eric Trump, plans to go public via a merger with a NASDAQ-listed company, expanding the Trump family's presence in cryptocurrency. Former President Trump also stated that the U.S. will remove all sanctions on Syria if re-elected. Poland is shuttering the Russian consulate in Krakow. This action is in response to a 2024 arson attack purportedly organized by Moscow. Malaysia and South Korea are holding their 9th round of Free Trade Agreement (FTA) negotiations in Kuala Lumpur. Across Latin America, China's presence is marked by contrasting forces: technological innovation alongside a less optimistic economic picture. The Czech Republic is witnessing a surge in arms production, potentially surpassing the automotive industry as the country's primary economic engine. Romania has secured €1, 60 billion in local debt prior to an upcoming election. In Switzerland, regulations are significantly reshaping the forex and derivatives trading sector. CAS Relief continues its mission to provide assistance to the refugee community in Lebanon. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.